Hi everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Solid, and here we discuss books that I've read throughout the week. I do a little storytelling and hopefully you enjoy it. This week, the book is You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. Let's get into it. This mystery thriller is told from two different points of view. Grace and Calvin are the main characters. Grace Evans is a New York banker who is looking for a small escape from her city life. She is described as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed bombshell. So much of her life is planned, but she didn't want this vacation to be. So she closed her eyes, threw a dart at the US map, and decided to go wherever the dart landed. She's gone on a 10-day vacation in an Airbnb in the middle of a small town in Wyoming. There is no cellular service, nor is there any Wi-Fi. This area is secluded. The owner of the ranch, his name is Calvin Wells, and Calvin is described as a handsome country boy with all the southern hospitality. He has a lot of problems and a complicated life. So she drives into the town in a raggedy car when Calvin meets her outside. She practically rushed there because there was some weird incident with the gas station owner who he was like chasing her to her car, so she was like, I gotta scoot and skedaddle. But anyways, Calvin brings in her luggage, gives her a tour of the place, and gives her a country dinner of hot dogs and beans. The one thing that seems off is the padlock on the basement door. But other than that, the place is peaceful. There are farm animals and beautiful outdoor scenery. So as Grace is unpacking, she notices there are several pairs of women's underwear and a sports bra. That's odd. Like, who would leave behind these necessities? But she thinks nothing of it. Maybe it's one of his old girlfriend's belongings. He confirms it whenever she mentions it, but says that she won't be needing any of it anymore because she died in a car accident about a year ago. The next day, through Calvin's encouragement, Grace goes into town to get more appropriate clothing for the country. While she's there, she meets Betty, the store owner. Now, Betty is a second mother to Calvin, and she somehow already knows about Grace whenever she meets her. That's weird. Calvin never said that he mentioned Grace to Betty, but Betty is suspicious of Grace. Whenever Grace gets back to the farm, she decides to make Calvin a dinner to show him how well she can make Brussels sprouts. He's not a fan, but he doesn't want to upset her for making the effort. And she mentions to Calvin that whenever she was heading back to the farm, her car started making these funny noises and her check engine light came on. And he offers to have his brother look at it. So you're like, okay, cool. As they're getting to know each other, she learns that Calvin's parents left the farm to him, not his brother. They put it in their will, so Calvin gave up his life to move back. Seems like a sweet son, right? Grace, to me, she seems like a tease. It's very clear there is physical attraction between the two of them. But we learned that she is not a person who likes to stay committed. She likes the thrill of the chase and thinks that relationships eventually become routine and boring. Whenever that happens, she has to go elsewhere to find excitement. Now, Calvin, he's the opposite. In fact, he falls in love hard and fast. So it's not surprising that he's falling for Grace, even in the small amount of time they spent together. Like, she's only supposed to be there 10 days. Like, I mean, I believe in love at first sight, but that's real cool. I mean, first, whatever. So the second night she's there, she's abruptly woken up from a sound of a woman screaming. She strains her ears to listen for anything else, but the country is so noisy. You got all these animals out there and different bugs that are making up noise. The cicadas, I think I said that right. The cicadas making up all that noise. So she eventually just, convinces herself that it's just a dream. And then the next morning, she mentions to Calvin that she heard a woman screaming the night before. And did he hear anything? He says no, but that it could be like the mating scream or call of a red fox. I looked it up, and it kind of does sound like a woman screaming, but not Not really, but okay. So she brushes it under the rug. They decide to go fishing, and he's a great teacher, very patient with her. There's a lot of flirting going on. She pushes her body up against him whenever he tries to like teach her how to like cast the line. I'm just like, I'm watching you, Grace. But they make a bet. The first one to catch a fish, the other one has to go in the river naked. That's very bold of you. Very bold. Like I don't know if I would have agreed to this. I don't think I would have. Like skinny dipping is not my friend and the water is cold. But whatever. She ends up winning. So Calvin has to skinny dip. And she jumps in naked later on with him too. And that's later on that night. But back to when they were fishing. Charlotte appears. Calvin and Char have been friends since their childhood. She works at the local grocery store and also helps Calvin sell his goods from the farm. Charlotte does not like Grace, like at all. It's clear that she feels as though Grace is interfering in her territory and needs to leave. But Charlotte just can't seem to fathom why Grace would come to their town of all towns in the middle of the nowhere. She thinks that Grace is weird and has a reason for being there. In Charlotte's eyes, Calvin is hers. But it seems as though the feelings are not mutual. They had a one night stand like probably like a month ago, and she just can't seem to get over him, but he don't feel that same way about her. The whole reason why Char even came over is because she needed to collect some eggs to sell at the store. But she's acting as though she can't collect them on her own. She's like, I need Calvin's help to help me. So she interrupts them and. So Grace decides to go for a run. And while she's on her run, she ends up falling into a pit of dead, decaying animals. Calvin, of course, comes to the rescue, but Charlotte comes to on the scene looking annoyed. She thinks that Grace is not made for the country life. After all, it's just dead animals. Like, come on. How would you expect somebody to act if they literally fell into a pit of rotten animals? Like the smells, they said that it was maggots and flies and ain't no telling what else in there. Like you can't possibly seem to believe that somebody wouldn't just be like, "Oh," or do you just think that somebody's just going to fall in and be like, "This is fun. Swimming with dead animals." It's clear at times that Calvin doesn't fully want to be in this town, but it's not clear why he keeps acting like he's stuck there. Like several times throughout the story, he will state that he started to use the property as an Airbnb because the finances weren't that great. But we constantly see him like he doesn't hesitate to pull out his card on and for large purchases. Like he got money. Either he got money or he is a person that like is making bad decisions with his finances, or he's keeping a secret. It's just like, which one is it? For instance, they go horseback riding on his horses when Grace is thrown from one. They go to the local doctor and Calvin pays for her examination. True, it is his fault since it was his horse, but if you're tight on money, I don't know if I would just be just like, it could be different because it's a liability issue, but I don't know. But after the incident, he was so sweet to her. He got her chocolates, flowers, a teddy bear, Tylenol wine, and some lotion. Because the doctor recommended for him to give her a massage. And he's like, yes, I'm the man with the master plan. I got it. Later on that night, while he massages her back, there is a loud knock on the door. When Calvin opens the door, Sheriff Almond is there. Apparently, there has been a missing persons report for a woman named Brianna Becker. She was expected home 3 days ago, but never showed up. Okay, I know you're thinking. Maybe they're checking a local woman's whereabouts, but she's not local. She's actually from Michigan, and her sister reported her missing. According to her Airbnb account, she was supposed to arrive at Calvin's 2 weeks ago, stay a few days, and leave. But Calvin says she never showed. He marked her as a no-show, and she never marked that she checked into his place. But the thing is, I want you to remember this. If she did show up, how would they be able to market online when there is no cell service or Wi Fi? See? How was he able to mark on there that she showed up if his Wi Fi is not a thing? See what I'm saying? Mm. This is an excerpt from the book. A shiver ran down my spine as a thought crossed my mind. The missing woman, the scream I heard the other night, the woman's clothes in the dresser. Maybe they weren't his exes. Maybe they were Brianna's. I made my way down the hallway and closed the bedroom door behind me. When I went to turn the lock, I realized there wasn't one. There was a sense of dread I had been carrying with me since I arrived. This place was different. Was I being paranoid or was there really cause for concern? There were too many coincidences, too many things going wrong, or just not how I thought they'd go. I should be completely relaxed and not on edge with thoughts running through my mind like a Rolodex. The scream I heard, the lack of Wi Fi and cell phone service, my car acting up, and the missing girl. The sheriff said she never checked in. He verified it himself. But then why did he come here asking questions he already had the answers to? Unless he didn't believe the answers. Okay. Grace keeps constantly asking him about her car. Like, when is your brother going to come fix my car? I need it fixed. Like, I don't want to be stranded here when it comes time for me to leave. And eventually he tells her, okay, he'll be here later on today to look at the car. Now, Calvin's brother's name is Joe. And Joe wants everybody to like him. He's more of a people pleaser. But it's not natural, it's forced. Calvin was the golden child, but Joe was always trying to win over his parents' love. That's how he got into fixing cars, because he thought he would bond better with their father. But that didn't work. He even stayed behind taking care of the farm even after Calvin left. When their parents died, they left the farm to Calvin. And Calvin thinks because of that, his brother, resents him for it. So the first encounter with Joe and Grace is kind of weird to me. She's laid out in a bikini, like a teeny weeny, eeny weeny, eeny weeny bikini. Like she's naked, very much so naked. When the two of them are introduced, I don't think I would feel comfortable being introduced to somebody while I'm in my bikini. But she felt comfortable being around Calvin in her bikini, so I guess it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Joe tells her that, he'll look at her car and Calvin ushers him off. Like, Calvin doesn't want his brother around Grace at all. Like, he's constantly making sure that they're not alone with each other. Like, I don't know what it is, but he does not want them to be alone with each other. So there are a few things that are wrong with her car, but Joe said that they could be fixed within a few days. The total will come up to like a little bit over 600. And guess who volunteers to pay for it? If you guess Calvin, you get a cookie. Now, he doesn't tell Grace that he's doing this, but he wants her to know that he cares for her by making this gesture. To me, this is like really bold and unnecessary of a decision to make. You literally just met this girl like 3 days ago. It's probably been three or 4 days that have passed. Like, you literally have just met this girl. How do you know that you want to, you know what? I don't know. Maybe it's different for men's that, but I wouldn't just be like, yeah, let me pay to get your car fixed. They all decide to go out to a bar that night. And while they're drinking and mingling, Charlotte appears. She just so happened to be in the area when she saw Joe's truck at the bar and decided to go in. So Charlotte, she keeps making digs at Grace. She does not want her to be here. I'm just like, ma'am, we didn't invite you to come hang out with us. You invited yourself to this outing, so you need to act accordingly. But whatever. They go on the dance floor. Shar is paired up with Calvin, and Grace is with Joe. And they're enjoying their time, but like Calvin keeps looking at Grace and Joe. Like he's not paying attention to Charlotte. He's just doing it just because. And she's drunk and just like, yes, I get to rub on, or not rub on. I get to be all up on him. Like, this is wonderful for me. Since Calvin is constantly watching Joe and Grace dance, he sees when she slaps him in the face. And he's like, I'm springing into action. He doesn't even ask what happened, what was said. He don't care. He just comes in there and punches his brother in the face, and he punches him straight in the jaw. And they get kicked out of the bar, as they should, because why are we fighting in my establishment? Joe storms off, and Calvin, since they rode in Joe's truck, he drives trailing Charlotte back to her house. Since she is so drunk, he wants to make sure she gets home safely. So when they get there, he makes sure she gets inside, makes sure she's in bed, and then he drives himself and Grace back to the ranch. Now, Grace never tells him what happened with Joe. She never mentioned it. She never talks about it. And I find that very suspicious because, like, if you're getting comfortable with me, would you not feel comfortable telling me whatever it is that you feel like my brother had said or did to you to make it to where you slapped him in the face? But, I digress. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like Calvin is really sweet, but then other times I feel like he's creepy. First off, he just keeps making like weird compliments, like basically insinuating that he's in love with her, which this is not a rom-com movie. So why are you falling in love with me that quick? Like how musicals and stuff like that, they always fall in love with each other so quick. This is no. He just sometimes he'll stand outside her room and he'll listen in just to see if she's all right or okay. And that just is very bizarre to me. Because why are you listening in? So today is Calvin's birthday. Charlotte planned a birthday bash for him. Since he never, you know, cares about his birthday, he thinks it's just another day. I think the same thing sometimes. Like, it's just another day, it's cool. It's fun. You can give me some gifts, but it's just another day. I don't have to have a party. But she's just like, yeah, we're gonna throw you a party. But Charlotte didn't pay for none of the stuff for the party. You can't just be like, let's throw you a party and then I have to pay for everything. Like the whole point of you saying let's throw a party is so you could throw it. I don't know, that's just different. It's almost like the same thing of like if somebody invites you out to dinner and then they don't pay for dinner, but they're the ones that invited you out to dinner. I mean, it's cool to, make sure that you have money just in case they don't pay for dinner, but I just think that it's odd. Like it's just Calvin and Grace are in the store and they're grabbing all of the things that they need for the party. And he decides to grab a bouquet of roses for Grace. Like, that's so sweet. Isn't that sweet? But remember, I told you that they're at the grocery store, and this is a small town, which means that Charlotte is there at work. And the only cashier working is her. So she scans everything, but when she sees the roses, she just be like just throw it into the bag. Ma'am, calm down. You so jealous? Okay. But this is another moment where Calvin does not hesitate to pull out his card and just swipe it and just go. I'm like, you got money? Oh, you got money. Calvin and Grace go back to the ranch. Grace cooks her nasty Brussels sprouts while Calvin takes a shower. So he comes into the kitchen in a towel. He pretends that, he's trying to see what she's cooking. And she presses her body up against him. So he takes this moment to kiss her. And things start getting a little steamy. They're not like doing it, but they're doing some things that can lead to doing it, if you know what I mean. But Joe ends up walking in like, happy birthday, bro! Oh, you have terrible timing, Joe. So, of course, Calvin is mad that, Joe walked on him on almost Mr. Nasty time. But he's like, Joe, I need you to apologize to Grace. So Joe is just like, yeah, I'm drunk. I was drunk. I didn't remember exactly what happened, but I'm going to go ahead and apologize to you because I know I probably did something crazy. And she accepts it. And then she tells Joe she needs him to fix her car in the next few days. Calvin, he's upset. He's trying to hide that he's upset, but he is upset. Like, ma'am, why are you trying to get away from me? Why? Like, I guess he just thought she's gonna fall in love with him and want to spend the rest of his life with him, but that's just kind of like delusional. But once Calvin leaves the room to get dressed, Joe lets it slip that Calvin hates Brussels sprouts. Of course, Joe didn't know that he was telling on Calvin, but Grace took note of the lie. Then Grace asks Joe, why is everyone treating Calvin like he's made of glass on his birthday? He tells her that Calvin's girlfriend died a year ago today. And then he tells her, be careful with Calvin because he falls hard and fast. Now, did you notice that? There was a difference between how the men described Lisa, the ex. Joe described her as Calvin's girlfriend, but Calvin described her as his ex. So which one was she? Throughout the evening, Calvin is keeping his eyes on his brother. He kept giving him things to do and overall just kept trying to keep him away from Grace. Every time Joe, tries to talk, Calvin pops up like, what did you say? What did you tell her? Like, dude, chill. It's just, what do you not want her to know of the reason why you keep popping up like that? That's just, okay. Joe and Calvin are, tending to the grill when a deputy, Wyatt, introduced himself to Grace. And he just so happens to be Charlotte's ex. Now, pause. I have to say this because I thought this was very disgusting. He had just got through peeing. Like, he had whipped his wee wee out and was peeing on the ground and, like, put it away. But he didn't go inside and wash his hands. She saw that he had peed on the lawn and was like, that's nasty. But whatever. And then he reaches out and he's like, hey, I'm Wyatt. I'd have been like, get that hand away from me, or what's up, brother? Let's dab. But she was just like, oh, I've touched nastier things. Now you got pee pee on your hands. That's nasty. That's real nasty. I'm like, do you wash your hands when you go to the bathroom? I bet you don't, Grace. I bet you don't. So I was telling you that he's Charlotte's ex. And he was never given a reason of why they broke up. She just, things were good. And then all of a sudden she just broke up with him out of nowhere. And she never told him the reason why. Now, we know you don't just break up with somebody just for no reason. There's something, whether it's something that the other person that you're in the relationship did, or there's somebody else that you're interested in. Grace asks about the missing girl, and Wyatt tells her she's not been found yet, but they found her car broken down outside of the town. Now, the car was cleaned out, except for her phone. They think she may have gotten a ride from somebody else and probably was having a hard time getting back home without a car or a phone. I understand maybe being like, oh, my car broke down, let me get out of here. But for you to leave your cell phone behind, that's suspicious. Charlotte comes, and what do you know? She is dressed just like Grace. For you to not like Grace, Charlotte, you show trying to be her, trying to get somebody attention. The whole night consisted of Betty and Charlotte making rude, snarky comments to Grace. It was like a very uncomfortable situation to be put in. There wasn't even that many people there, to be honest. It probably was like a handful of people. So it's not that many people that you go to try to like avoid interacting with the snarky people. But fast forward later on the night, everyone has left. It's just Grace and Calvin. So they're trying to get things spicy when they hear someone clear their throat. It's Charlotte. It's Charlotte. Charlotte did not leave, and she is pissed. She had decided to stay and collect eggs, which nobody asked her to do, but she did it anyways. So she's mad. She throws the eggs down and she storms out. And Calvin follows her because he's like, okay, she may be too drunk to get home, so, I may need to drive her home. And Charlotte turns around and she's questioning him. She's like, what is going on between you and Grace? And he tells her it is none of your business. He's like, I had one night with you, Charlotte, but I want all of the nights with Grace. And that just made her even more mad. So she storms off. Calvin surprises Grace with a candlelit picnic. Candlelit picnic. Calvin surprises Grace with a candlelight picnic out in the pasture. And that's so sweet. I really like Calvin, and I'm really like, I'm just like, he's doing things that I'm just like, I like. He is kind of a little creepy, but it just could be just, you know how sometimes like you like somebody so much that you end up doing things that is just beside yourself because you really like them. I'm like, maybe this is what it is. He's just doing stuff because he really is enamored with her and he just wants to win her over. But he still keep doing weird stuff, and I don't know if some of the weird stuff can be justified, but maybe, I don't know. But they end up doing it under the stars. And I'm like, that's so romantic. It's so sweet up underneath the stars with your wine and your cheese and your grapes. Nice. So after they finish, he asks her what she's thinking about. And she's like, that she doesn't want it to end. Now, when I first read this, I was just like, I thought she said that she wanted it to end. I was like, dang, she cold. You just got the nasty done and you. But it wasn't what I thought it was. She asks him, no secrets? And he tells her, no, no secrets. She proceeds to ask him about his parents. And he tells her that they died in a fire. She told him what Charlotte told her earlier today, which was she hopes that Joe keeps her there permanently. Like Charlotte was being mean to Grace the entire time that she was there. And like at one point, Charlotte had she had asked Grace, did Calvin mention me to you? And Grace was like, no. So she got mad about that and was like, I hope that Joe keeps you here permanently. Grace is like, what does that mean? So Calvin tells her the night of the accident that killed Lisa, Joe was the one who was driving. Isn't that mean for you to tell somebody, basically, in so many words, I hope Joe kills you? Girl, I probably would have had to put my hands around her neck. We don't do that. So apparently, like, they were all too drunk, and Joe thought that he could drive them home. He ended up smashing into an animal. There were no signs of him breaking. Joe suffered from a brain injury and was in a coma for a week, and Lisa died, but Calvin got away with just scratches. Calvin insinuates that Joe was different after the accident. He was more angry, reckless, and impulsive. And I'm sure he would be if he had a brain injury. Like, every single time when people, like, you'll hear about them serial killers, every single time that you hear about them having a brain injury, it's like something messes with their it's something that messes with their the process of right or wrong or something like that, and they just, I don't know, it just makes it, they just don't have any control over their emotions, and they're very impulsive, and they just do stuff like kill people. But so the next morning, Grace wakes up alone outside wrapped in a sheet, and she's still naked from the doing it session. Calvin is nowhere to be found. She hears the sound of a mountain lion approaching her. She tries throwing food at it, but it's not interested in that. It wants her. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna, run away. She tries to run and ends up tripping over a rock. Ma'am, you can't see where you're going. You gotta trip over a rock. So once the animal sees that, it's like, yeah, I'm finna pounce on this trick. So it's midair jumping towards her when she hears a gunshot go off. Calvin ended up shooting the mountain lion in the head with the shotgun, which I'm like, it's terrible timing, but perfect timing. Like, where were you? Where were you? She was upset. Where were you? He was inside making breakfast. And I kind of feel like I probably would have had a mix of emotions. I would have been mad and I would have been, grateful at the same time. But don't leave me out here by myself. When you got all these creatures out here that want to eat my face off, don't do that. She's running to the house so she can take a shower. And as she's running, like, okay, the mountain lion, when he shot it, all of, like, it landed in front of her, but like blood got all over her. So when she's running to the house to take a shower, the sheriff pulls up and he don't know what's going on. So he pulls his gun out and he's ready to shoot Calvin. And Calvin's like, hold up, hold up. I didn't do anything to her. It's a mountain lion that I shot over there. And so they show him the mountain lion and and the sheriff was like, oh, because I was about to have to do something. He's there because he's still looking for Breonna Becker. So he asks, can he do a search of the property? Calvin agrees to the search. I mean, reluctantly. He didn't want to, but he does. Grace felt in that moment like that she wanted to mention some things to the cop. Like, hey, I heard some stuff, but I don't know if it was a dream or not. Like, just trying to be a tattletale. The tattletale snitch. You get your tongue slit. After she takes a shower, she ends up stumbling into another man. She thought it was Calvin, but it turned out to be Albert. Now we don't know who Albert is, but Calvin ends up telling her, "Hey, I'm taking on another guest. He's only going to be staying here for a few days." She's just confused because she's just like, "Why would he not tell me that we would, have another guest here?" And she's like, Albert doesn't even look like the type to even have an Airbnb account. Airbnb account. He's an older gentleman, which I understand what she's saying because older people kind of they're not tech savvy. They do stuff the more of an old school way that they're more comfortable with. And she thinks that something is off. And she's like, maybe I'm blinded by like lusting for Calvin, but let me hurry up and just, let me just get through these few days that I have to stay here and then I can go back home. Calvin ends up going into town. Grace decides to, do some yoga, to, you know, I guess calm herself. But I'm just like, didn't you just take a bath? I don't know. I don't wanna work out after I just took a bath. But whatever. Albert is watching her, which is it's gross. It's like, sir, don't look at me. Just don't look at me. Just nasty. He's like, you real bendy. And she was like, you mean flexible? But I wouldn't even have said that. I was just stormed off. Like, ugh. She instead decides to go inside to read a book because she's just like, I had enough of whatever's going on. She goes to the bookshelf that, Calvin has in the house and she picks a book up. And when she opens it, a receipt falls out. It's dated for a few days before she came to the ranch. And the receipt is like rung up like for over $500 worth of books. Why would you, Calvin, I'm looking at you weird. Why do you need $500 worth of, I mean, I know why I need $500 worth of books. But why would you need $500 worth of books? And she ain't seen you pick up nan book the whole time that she's been here. You ain't got time to read because you got to tend to, Gretchen and whatever the other horse name is and all of the chickens and stuff like that. So just lie after lie after lie. Oh, he's gone. Charlotte ends up showing up and she's drunk. Drunk. You could smell it coming out of her pores. And Grace tells her he's not here. And she's like, good, because I wasn't looking for him anyways. I want to talk to you. And she's just like, did he ever mention me to you, Grace? And Grace is like, no. And she was just like, well, we slept together. We slept together a month ago. Grace is like looking at her like, Calvin said he doesn't want you to be coming around anymore. And Charlotte's like, when did he say that? And she was just like, last night when we effed out in the pasture. And I'm like, why would you say that? That's kind of mean. I mean, Charlotte may deserve a little, a tongue lashing, but dang, girl. After that happened, Calvin pulls up and is like, what is Charlotte doing here? Like, dang, I can't get rid of her. So she goes up to him and she tells him, I told Grace about us. And she's just trying to hurt him. And he's just like, you need to leave. You need to get out of here. Like, I don't want you coming around anymore. And she's like trying to hurt him by saying, I slept with Joe last night and I told him everything. I'm not keeping any more of your secrets, pretty much. And Calvin's like, told him everything. What did you tell him? While he's like gripping her arm. And she's like, like, Al, like, give me my arm back. And like, punches him, and he pushes her, but he pushes her so hard that like her her head, like it creates a gash, so she's like bleeding like blood, and she's just like, like, don't touch me, whatever, and she storms off. But she really doesn't storm off because she's hurt, so she leaves very slowly. While that's happening outside, because Grace went inside once she saw him come. She goes inside and she's packing up majority of her things, because she's just like, if I gotta book it, I need to be ready. But I'm like, how are you gonna get out of there without a car? Now I would steal Calvin's car. I would have been stole his truck. I would have just stole it. I need to go. You can deal with the car. You already, which she didn't know, but you already paid to get it fixed. It's your car now. But she's like, okay, I'm just gonna keep acting normal until I get my car fixed so I can jet out of here. Later on that night, everybody's in bed, and she feels somebody get in the bed with her, and they, wrap their arm around her, and she's just like, oh, this must be Calvin, whatever, I'm just gonna ignore it. But she's just like, this person smells like alcohol, and the alcohol that he smells like is not something that Calvin has been drinking. So who is this? It's Albert. It's Albert. Albert is in the bed with her. So Calvin comes in and he's just like, get out of her room. Like, get out of here, man. And she's just like, I want a lock on my door. Put a lock on my door. So the next day he installs it. And I'm just thinking in my head, you shouldn't have even came here in this raggedy car to a location that has no cellular service and no Wi-Fi. Like, even if, like, okay, he told her when she got there that there was no Wi-Fi. Cool. But why would you want to go somewhere that didn't have no cell service? Even without the Wi-Fi, you still would have had cell service. Ma'am. Whatever. It's only 2 days before she is ready to leave. Before, like, it's time for her to leave. And I'm just like, traveling alone as a woman is hard enough without doing things that deliberately put you in a situation where you could be in trouble. Like, you put yourself in the most terrible position where you're helpless. You're helpless. Albert apologizes to her the next day. He's like, I may be many things, but I'm not a person who would, take advantage of a woman. I'm not that. I may be a drunk, and I was drunk last night, and I apologize for that. I'm so sorry for that. And she accepts his apology. She's like, oh, well, he's just an old man who's just drunk, so he don't know any better or whatever. Her and Albert sit on the front porch, and they're having beers, and they're like, getting along very well. And Calvin pulls up. Now, a police car is trailing behind him that he didn't know was there. That person in that car is Wyatt. Wyatt gets out the car and punches dude in the face. It's a lot of punching and slapping and things going on in this book. Wyatt punches Calvin to the ground and is about to deliver another blow when Grace steps between them like, hey, no, we're not doing this. Wyatt is like, what did you do to Charlotte? I saw what you did to her. Grace defends Calvin. She tells him that, like, Charlotte arrived here and she was looking for trouble, and she, said she slept with Joe. Now, Wyatt and Joe are best friends. Whenever the car accident happened a year ago and the whole town was against Joe, Wyatt was the only one who was, like, just there for him. Like, they were more like brothers than they were best friends. Wyatt is more of a brother to Joe than Calvin is to Joe. Charlotte is dirty for what she did. You dirty for that, because you were trying to do something to hurt somebody else, but you hurt another person in the same sense. And Joe, more than likely, because of his brain injury and how it messes with his memory and how he's always getting drunk, he don't know what he's doing. Look at me, I'm defending Joe, making it seem like he's a child. He's still an adult and he still can make decisions for himself, but She knew what she was doing when she did what she was doing. Wyatt ends up apologizing and he leaves. Grace and Calvin are sitting on the porch. They're drinking beers and they're talking. And Grace is like, I'm gonna confront this dude about, him saying he has money problems, but he really doesn't. So he admits to her, yeah, my parents, when they died, they had insurance policies, and I ended up getting pretty much all of those things. So I'm pretty well off. And the reason why I started to make this property an Airbnb is because I was lonely. That's sad if it's true. But you also have people here that you can talk to. Like you got Betty, you got Charlotte who's obsessed with you. You got a brother Joe, you got the doctor. Um, you got those four people. I think that was four. I didn't count. You got those people. So, you got some people. I know it's a small town, but you got people to talk to. Conversation continues and they're laughing and they're having a good time. When Grace is like, what's going on with my car? And he's like, I'll have it fixed tomorrow. He is so over her wanting to leave him. I think that was hilarious. How she's just like, okay, he's laughing. When is my car going to be fixed, sir? Albert comes outside and asks Calvin, hey, can you take me to the liquor store? I'm out of Jack. And Calvin is like, I don't want to go to the liquor store. We got alcohol in there, man. And Grace is like, no, we need some wine. Go ahead and go. So he's like, okay, I'll go. So he goes, they leave, they go to the liquor store. And while they're gone, someone starts beating on the front door. Before Grace could even open the door, Joe bursts in and he is bloodied and bruised. And we know that Wyatt went rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat on that. Joe is looking for Calvin because Wyatt confronted him about sleeping with Charlotte, and he thinks that Calvin was the one who told him. So Joe starts telling her, you don't know anything about our family. You don't know anything about my brother. Like, my dad was abusive. Calvin got away from the abuse because he went off. I made, sure I stayed out of my dad's way. So the only person who was left was my mom. And she was the one who received, all the blows. The night that, the accident happened, I did not drive that car. I did not kill Lisa. He said that he had worked a 24-hour shift and he was tired. He didn't even want to go out that night. But he was like, it's my brother's birthday, so I'll go with him. So he's just like, all I remember was, getting in the truck, and that was it. That was it. And Shar even told him that she saw them take off, so she knew who was in the driver's seat. It doesn't mention who's in the driver's seat, but I'm like, who was in the driver's seat? You need to tell me. But he starts acting erratic and strange, so Grace is like, I'm gonna call the cops. There's a house phone there. So she picks up the house phone and she calls the cops. And Joe is like talking in the background and he's just like, Calvin is taking everything from me. I think it's time I take something from him. So he comes up to her and he ripped that phone from the wall and like smashes it on the ground. Then he goes into the living room and he starts setting the curtains on fire. He tells her, you shouldn't have come here. This Airbnb is out of business. Yes, you show right. She shouldn't have come here. Because clearly all you motherfuckers in this, all y'all in this town is crazy. And I'm just the only sane person. She runs into the kitchen to look for the fire extinguisher because she's like, it's clearly one. It has to be one in here. She can't find it. So she fills up a bowl with water and is running into the living room to, douse the fire. When he grabs her and he's just like, no, we are not doing that. Let the living room burn, because he's like wiggling her. That's why I'm doing this. He's wiggling her. And so she wiggles up out of his arms and she kicks him in his privates. And when she tries to run away, like she's trying to run towards her room, which, well, she tries to run towards her room. He grabs her ankle and she crashes to the ground. While all of this is happening, the curtains are still on fire in the background. You're trying to kill me, Joe. He says, I'm saving you from Calvin. And then he lets her go. Are you saving me from Calvin when you trying to set the house on fire that I'm in? So Calvin pulls up and he sees that a fire, he sees the fire through the window. So he runs into the house, goes into the kitchen, grabs the fire extinguisher, and like he's about to run into the living room when Joe comes and pretty much punches him. And Calvin is like, Joe, what did you do? Like, what is going on? And Joe was like, what I should have done a long time ago. Then he's like, I swing, but he swings straight into the fire extinguisher. And Calvin hits him in the jaw with the fire extinguisher. And then he runs into the living room and he puts out the fire. So Joe, he's telling him, like he's yelling at him, this house should have been burned down a long time ago. It should have been burned down the first time. And then he's like, Mom never, they didn't die in the house fire. Mom killed Dad and then she killed herself. And that's what happened. It was a murder-suicide? Dang, your mama just killing people like that? I mean, it was kind of justified. Your daddy was kind of beating on her, so. Don't beat on people, okay? Don't beat them. Calvin is looking for Grace, and he finds her in her room, and she hits him with the umbrella like she's ready to swing on him. Once she sees that it's Calvin, like she drops it, but it's clear that she's just like she's in another space. Like he's grabbing her and he's just like, oh, everything's all right. I'm so sorry about what's happening. Are you okay? And of course she's just like standing there just like in disbelief. He's like, did Joe hurt you? And she's like, no. And then she's just like, I need to lie down. So she goes and get in the bed, which I don't know if I would, whatever. The police end up rolling up, and Albert is nowhere to be found. Sheriff Allman, he has had enough of them. He's like, this is my third time coming up here this week. What the hell is going on? And Calvin explains, Grace called the cops. There was a fire, but Grace called the cops, and now she's inside and she's lying down. And Joe is like, hey, it was me. I set the fire. Just take me to the station. Sheriff is like, you sit there. And he puts his other henchmen, to watch Joe while Calvin and him go inside to look for Grace. So they're calling her name, but she isn't answering. Ma'am, why are you not answering? Why are you not answering? Like, it's been 2 seconds. Why are you not answering? So they go inside her room, and he's like shaking her awake. Ma'am, you heard them. You heard them, ma'am. Ma'am, you did. But she wakes up and she gives the sheriff a statement. But he's like, Calvin, get out of here so I can hear what she has to say. And he tells her, it's better if you leave. But she's like, I only have 2 days left. My car is not even fixed. He thinks that the wrench is trouble. And he tells her, if you need anything, use this card and call me. If the sheriff thinks that there's something wrong, you should have left with the sheriff. I would have left with him. Hey, can I stay with you for a couple of months? Not months, but can I stay with you? Because I don't know what's going on here, and I'm good. So everybody leaves the house except for her. She's the only one there, and she's just like, you know what? That padlock on that basement door, I'm finna get in there. It's something in that basement, and it has my name on it. So she takes a bobby pin out of her hair and she like fiddles with the lock. And I need to learn how to pick locks with bobby pins. I need to know how to pick them, because if you can do it as easy as she did, I mean, she said it took a few minutes. I probably would have gave up after one, but I need to learn how to do that. So, but she opens the door. It's dark, and the light switch doesn't work. So she uses her phone. She's like, this is the only good thing for my phone to be used for as a flashlight, because clearly it has no service. There's a lot of junk down there. She's looking through boxes and she finds a picture of Calvin, Joe, and Albert. Albert is their uncle. Why didn't Calvin tell her this? Like, why? If it's your uncle, it's cool. Like, hey, my uncle's staying here for a couple of days. It's cool. You just be lying about just anything. You be like, the sky is blue and you go outside and look and it's raining. Why you lie, Calvin? Calvin, you just lying just to be lying, just to be hearing yourself talk. But she takes that picture and she slides it in her pocket. And she's looking around more and she finds this large notebook that says Calvin's guest book, you know. So she opens the book and she's reading through and she sees the logs of all the guests that have been coming there. There have been some women there, even though he said that he ain't never had a woman guest before. You liar. You lied again. You just lying just to lie. But as she's scrolling through, she gets to the final page and she sees Brianna Becker. There's a check-in time and date, but there is not a checkout date. Grace, run. Run like hell. Run like a bat out of hell. Get out of there. She hears a car door slam shut. And she's like, oh, I got to hurry up and get upstairs. But before she leaves, she grabs a hunting knife that she saw. So she runs upstairs, she locks the basement door, and she runs into her room and hides under the covers. Because clearly, if you hide under the covers, nobody will ever be able to find you. And some time has passed, and she's like, what is going on? So she looks outside her window and she sees there's a woman standing on the lawn. It's Betty. So she goes outside to meet Betty. And Betty is like in a daze and she's mumbling under her breath. She says, this house is evil. It infects everyone. Nothing good happens here. You shouldn't have come here because now I'm not sure if you'll be able to leave. If I would have heard that. But Grace calls Betty's name and she comes out of her trance. And Betty's like, please don't tell Calvin I was here. And then she gets in her car and she leaves. Grace, why didn't you go with her? I don't like Betty either, but the chances are I'd have a better chance of living if I was with Betty. She's still standing outside thinking about what Betty said when she hears a truck coming up the road. Oh, Grace is like, I'm finna go and run in my room. She goes in there and she's about to like turn the lock because he installed a new lock. When she sees the lock is installed the opposite way. It's put to where she can be locked in. Calvin, you got some splaining to do, because what the hell? Now at this moment, Calvin is very, very much so creepster, peeping Tomster, something. He be waiting outside her room listening. He doesn't want her car fixed, and he wants her to stay there with him. Like, this is clearly isolation techniques. Like, what's next? You're gonna beat me and tell me that I shouldn't talk to my family. Like, it's going down here from here. And at this point, like, he's told her he loves her. Like, he's just trying to say anything he can just to keep her there. And she's just not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. I am not feeling it. She don't even want to be around him. She goes into the kitchen like the next morning to make herself breakfast, and she don't even sit at the table with him. She's like, I'm gonna sit at this counter and I'm gonna dimple my things right here and like drink my coffee, and I'm gonna go back to my room. And Calvin's trying to make small talk with her, and she's giving him like small responses like, yeah, like just mumbling. So she turns and she goes to walk towards her room. But she's like, no, I need to confront him. Do you need to confront him about anything else? Because clearly all he does is lie after lie after lie after lie. But she's like, okay, I'm going to ask him about, the lock on the door. He can't seem to fathom why she's changed on him, why she's thinking that why she's acting different towards him. Sir, you've been acting real weird. He's just like, why is she looking at me like she's scared? But he tells her, he's like, it was an honest mistake, Grace. I didn't mean to put it that way. But sir, you've been acting weird the whole time and you haven't been honest with her at all. But whatever. Also, dude is a handyman. You're a handy dandy man. How you gonna put it on there backwards? Like, no. But he tells her, I'll fix it. I'll fix it, and I'll get somebody to fix your car. And she's like, sure. Because, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm talking about me. Forget Grace. I don't want to be here anymore reading this book. Grace is just, she's upset. So she's like, okay, I'm going to go for a run. And she's stomping everywhere, kicking up dirt. She wanted to get as far away from the property as she could. So she starts sprinting, but then steps on an uneven rock It rolls her ankle. This literally sounds like a white woman in a scary movie. Like, stop doing stupid stuff. Like, watch where you going. Like, didn't they tell, like, isn't that a part of running school to look at your feet? Not look at your feet, but to look at the ground ahead of you to make sure you don't trip and fall. Like, how I need to look ahead of me when I drive so that I don't run into potholes, even though I still run into potholes, but still, that's different. She's cursing and she's just mad, like, dang it! I done rolled my ankle. I'm tired of being here. So of course Calvin hears and he's like, I'm gonna run to the rescue. Well, she's scared for him to even touch her, but he picks her up, and carries her, to the ranch. He ices her ankle and cleans her hands and cleans her hands and her knees since she fell forward on him. This is another moment where she should have rethought her life, because do you even want to hear anything else this man has to say if all he's done is tell you lies? But she's like, you know what? I need him to confess some more things to me. She brings out the photo and throws it at him and like, what is this? So now he knows she went into the basement. Okay. Okay. He knows that you went into the basement. He tells her, some kind of excuse of why he didn't tell her that Albert pretty much is his degenerate uncle. But he's just like, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you, but I didn't think anything of it. I know he's not all there, so I just was like, let me just go ahead and just, have him stay here, and I'll just get him out of here. So when he tells her, you can trust me, she then asks him, did Bree Becker trust you? Why would you ask him that? Like, you're making it worse. It's clear that something is wrong with this man. It's clear that he's hiding something from you. Do you want the next thing that he hides to be your body? Like, come on, ma'am. Just come on. Just make better choices. Okay, so this is an excerpt from the book. It's kind of long, but I thought it was very detailed. She said, did Bree Becker trust you? He raises his eyebrow. Bree Becker? The missing woman. The one the sheriff came here asking about? I already told you and the sheriff she never showed up. I didn't lie about that. I chewed on my words, thinking of whether I should bring up the guest book or not. I saw it. I saw her. I saw the check in date and the blank checkout date. How would he explain that away? I took a deep breath and eyed him in a challenging way. My jaw was so tight, I thought I might grit my teeth into dust. I saw your guest book. What? He cocked his head. His face was unreadable. I didn't know if it was fear, anger, sadness, regret, or a mixture of all. In the basement. Her name was in it. That's not true, he nearly yelled. I couldn't tell if he was being defensive because he was telling the truth or because he was lying. Without another word, he stumped out of the living room. I heard the basement door creak open. His footsteps descended the stairs. Things shuffled around, and then there were footsteps again. This time they were coming up the stairs. He held the notebook out. The words Calvin's guest book were on the cover. Here, he said. I flipped quickly to the last page like, dragging my finger down the list of names, I found the last one. The paper read, Kayla Whitehead. I remember seeing her name, but Breeze was last. I flipped several more pages. They were all blank. No, her name was here. Bree Becker with a heart over the letter I. It was here. I saw it with my own eyes. Check-in date, check-out, never. She was here. Bree Becker was here. I don't know what you're talking about, Grace. I told you the truth about her. She was never here. He rubbed his eyebrows. But I saw. My words fell off. I saw it, didn't I? I scanned the page again. Her name was gone. I lied about Albert and liking Brussels sprouts and even lied about enjoying reading. He walked to the bookshelf and slid several books out, holding them up. I've never read a damn one of these. I just bought them to make me look smart. Calvin tossed the books onto the chair. But I didn't lie about Bree Becker. He let out a pained breath and ran his hands down his face. My mouth parted, but no words came out. I didn't know what to say. Calvin walked toward the front door, stopped, and turned back to me. I'm going to get your vehicle working and fix the lock on your door, and then I'm going to make sure you have a great last night on my ranch. He sealed his promise with a heavy nod. My stomach was in knots. I took a few small breaths, trying to keep my composure. I saw her name, didn't I? It was dark in the basement and I was on edge. Had been since I arrived. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe he wasn't the one lying. Okay, I said. I didn't know what else to say. He let out a sigh and smiled. I forced the corners of my lips up. They quivered, but he didn't notice. He smiled a little wider and then headed outside. I closed my eyes and tried to picture the guest book the way I had seen it the day before. It was clear as day. I had seen it. There were few things I trusted, but my eyes were one of them. Calvin may have been telling the truth about Albert, or Uncle Albert for that matter, but he wasn't telling the truth about Bree. I saw her name. Check out. Never. She was still here. I could feel it. Calvin is delusional. He is gaslighting her. He thinks that if he can figure out some way to make her happy, that it will change her mind and she will stay with him. Like, sir, don't you know that she has a whole life in New York? Like, she has a whole job.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Like, sir, do you not realize that she has a whole life in New York? She cannot just give that up and just stay with you. Are you crazy? I mean, clearly he is. He calls and he asks Betty to come over, and she comes and replaces the drapes. Her and Calvin end up arguing about the truth about his parents' death, that Joe had told him. And Betty's like, I can't deal with this. So she goes and checks on her bee colony that she has on the farm. When she gets there, she starts screaming. So Calvin runs to her aid. This is from the book. Albert laid on his back, his mouth gaping open. Vomit dripped down the side of his face, which was swollen like a balloon blown up past its capacity. His eyes, although open, were barely visible due to the inflammation. His skin was red, blotchy, and covered in hives. Chunks of flesh were missing. Most likely the turkey vultures had got to him first. His clothes were damp, and the bees were still buzzing around him, crawling over his flesh, in and out of his mouth over his glazed eyeballs. Can you almost feel it? Can you feel the tingle? Ah! So when Grace hears police sirens, she's like, what the hell done happened now? She finds out that Albert died. The paramedics wheel him away. Sheriff Allman is just like, I am here again. He's skeptical of everything. So he tells Calvin, if I find anything in this autopsy that points to anything but an accident, I'm arresting your ass in this. Calvin was supposed to be watching his uncle because he knew he was mentally unstable. But Calvin is like, it's Betty's fault. Betty, is your fault because you had these bees on here. But really, no, Calvin, it's your fault. It's your fault. You should have been watching your uncle. You know that he was drinking more than he was supposed to be drinking. He don't have it all the way there. You're supposed to be watching him. Calvin and Grace go inside and they have dinner after, everybody has left. Calvin is thinking about making his specialty. Don't nobody want no pork and beans, hot dogs and beans, wieners and things. We don't want any of that. You need to make me something that's not that. But he's like, okay, I'm not going to make her it because that meal was special. That was when I won Grace's trust. And he held that near and dear to his heart. I want to throw a skillet at him, play grit ball with him, or something. She asks him, is he doing all right? And he's just like, she cares about me. He said to her, something like this was bound to happen because, it was something wrong with him. He was allergic to bees. And, because he was drunk, he might have, stumbled into the bee colony and that was the reason why it caused his death. So he's like, yeah, you know.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin. This is serious.
But this fool ain't even crying. He's not crying. There hasn't been a single tear. It's just dry as a desert. Like, who are you trying to fool, sir? I have eyes and I can see. I'm not blind. Even if I got 4 eyes, Grace is not me. Okay, she's not wearing glasses, but she can see. She can see, sir, that you are not crying. He's like, your car, I'm going to get somebody over here to fix your car. They're supposed to be here later. And she's like, thank you. Thank you so much. So, like, they continue to have dinner and she's trying to be nice to him. She's like, okay, I'm going to call it a night. And she's heading to bed. And he just, I don't know, he's feeling a mixture of different emotions, like whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's, I don't know what it is. But while she's making her way to the bedroom, he spins her around and starts kissing her all nasty and sloppy. He's like pushing his tongue to open her mouth, like, ew. And she pushes him off of her. And he looking at her like, did I do something wrong? Yes, sir. You have to ask for permission to have these lips. You don't just get them all willy nilly. She tells him she's sorry, but she can't. She just can't. She's exhausted and she's leaving tomorrow. And he's like, I know you think you are. She said, what did you say? And he's like, I said, I know that you are. Is that what he said? Cause sir, cause she's just like, I'm going to bed. So she goes into the room and she's like, okay, since I can't lock the door from the inside, I'm gonna push something up against the door so that you won't come in here and watch me in my sleep. And she's like, I'm so hoping tomorrow he does not lock me in this room. I want to leave. Tomorrow she's supposed to leave. So later on that night, she wakes up abruptly from her sleep, not knowing what it was that woke her up. Then she feels Calvin put his hand over her mouth, telling her it's time for her to be quiet. She's caused enough trouble. He says, I'm sorry, Grace. Truly I am. I can't promise you will enjoy any of what is about to happen to you. In fact, I can promise quite the opposite. But just know that it wasn't your fault. You merely, well, you made it worse. Then he puts, I don't know if it's a fish hook or something like that, but it's some type of steel, and he pierces it through her body. He says, remember what I said about fishing? The trick is to get the hook all the way through it from end to end so it can't get off. You're the worm, Grace. You could have been the fish, but you wanted to get away from me so badly. She's like, I feel the steel press further inside me, scraping and tearing my insides. A hand squeezed my throat, crushing it further like a vice grip. My last breath was mere moments away. My mind closed off as the steel and barb began to push through my esophagus. And then she wakes up. You made my stomach hurt for no reason. Because it was almost like I could feel it. I could feel it. I could feel it. But she's like, okay, he's not in here. Nobody's in here. So she forces herself to go back to sleep. I'm not sleeping. I am not sleeping. I am staying up for the remainder of the night. I'm flipping on the light switch. I'm sleeping with the lights on. I can't do this. I cannot. The next morning, Calvin wakes up to find that Grace isn't in the house. I'm like, yes, she got away. She got away. He was so upset about last night, so he just drank himself to sleep. And he ended up sleeping later than he intended because he wanted to catch her before she left. But then he hears a car trunk slam shut. And he's like, oh, she's still here. So he walks into the kitchen and grabs him a cup of coffee. Grace walks back into the house to thank him for everything and to tell him goodbye. He walks her out to her car and he asks her, will I ever see you again? And she says, I do not think so. This is from him. I was only 6 feet away from her now. I slid a thumb into the loop of my jeans and rocked back on my feet. I liked that she thought she was leaving. It was cute. Goodbye, Calvin. She got into her vehicle and closed the door. Grace slid the key into the ignition and delivered a small smile before turning it. The engine went click, click, click. She struggled. Turning the key again. Click, click, click. The engine wouldn't turn over. Her face became panicked, and she tried a third time. Click, click, click. Music to my ears. Her arm flailed like a windmill as she cranked the window, handle down on the dated vehicle. Grace gritted her teeth, completely displeased. I thought you said you fixed it. I thought I did too, I lied. Go ahead and pop the hood. I moseyed over to the front of the car and lifted the hood, toying around with some wires, pretending to examine and make adjustments to random parts. The car door squeaked open. Her heels munched on the gravel. From my peripheral vision, I saw her come into view. She huffed, folding her arms in front of her chest and pushed out her hip. Quite the attitude for a woman without a working car or cell phone. What's wrong with it? Her voice had an edge of noise to it. I'm not so sure. I'm not a mechanic, Grace. You promised it'd be fixed today. I turned toward her, and a sinister smile slowly crept across my face, the mask beginning to slip. I promised to lots of things. What the hell does that mean? She nearly yelled. I couldn't help but laugh, and in an instant I was lunging toward her. She had no time to react. Grace tried to swipe me away, but her pretty blonde hair was already wrapped around my hand. She screamed so loud her voice cracked. I promised I'd let you leave, and we both know that's not happening, I said, dragging her back to the house. Ah! So she dug her nails into his skin. He smacks her in the face and tells her, You shouldn't have come here, Grace, but I'm glad you did. She bit down on his pinky finger, drops her to the ground, then kicks her in her ribs. She gets up and she tackles him. I'm like, why would you not run the opposite way, heifer? But she tackles him and then she runs into the house. And he's like, I like the hunt better than the catch. So he goes inside looking for her. There are two room doors that are closed. It's his room and it's the room that she was staying in. So because the lock is on the outside, he just goes to her room and just, locks it. Like, if she's in there, the trick is stuck. But he's like, let me go check my room instead, too. So he walks into his room and she's in there holding a knife. And he's like, I'm finna get her. But then, like, he's like, something is wrong with my body. And he ends up falling to the ground, paralyzed. He asks her, What did you do to me? She's like, A little of this, a little of that. He says, Does it have something to do with that missing beat? And she asks him, Is she here? So at this point, I'm like, okay, maybe she's the sister of the missing girl, of Brianna. She must be the sister of her, and she came to like get this dude. After she asks him, like, is she still here? He's like, yes. She asks if she's still alive, and he says, I think so. He starts confessing that Bree is hidden in a shed in the woods. He didn't kill Albert, but Albert, has stumbled into the beehive, because he must have heard the woman yelling in the woods. He said that he lied about the Wi-Fi. He had Wi-Fi, it was just unplugged. So she gets on the computer and she's like, I'm going to give myself a 5-star rating. Ma'am, we do not have time for this. You need to kill him or get out or do something. Then she's like, because she wants him to confess more things. I don't understand why she needs to be so nosy. I'll find these things out later, if, through the news, if that's what happened. But I don't need to know this right now. So she's like, what actually happened the night Lisa died? And he said, if I tell you, will you call the police? And she's like, yes. And he's like, okay, cool, because I want this to be over with. I didn't have time to deal with this girl. So the night that Lisa died, he was actually driving the car. Calvin was actually driving the car. He said that Lisa was telling him that she was going to be positioned temporarily in Alaska. I think she was like a nurse or something like that. And so he automatically assumed that that would be the end of their relationship. Of course, she's telling him, like, no, like, you can come with me or whatever, but he is not trying to hear it. He's just like, no, you're going to break up with me. So he proceeds to gun it, hurry up and unbuckled her seatbelt, and then, like, ran into an animal that was crossing the street. Like, she was impaled by the animal. It was an elk. She was impaled by it. And of course, like, his brother, ended up with a lot of injuries too, because he was in the backseat sleep. So he waited until she died, moved his brother to the front seat, and then he called the cops. Grace grabs a knife and she straddles him. He's terrified. He's like, I thought you said you would call the police if I told you. She says, I guess I lied. And then she stabs him to death. Who is this lady? Who is Grace? Who is this woman? She dyes her hair. She takes out the blue contacts she's been wearing the whole time. She takes a shower. She cleans up the evidence that she was even there. Who are you? if you have multiple identities, ma'am, or are you just changing? I don't know what's going on. But okay. While she is, trying to clean up the house to make sure she gets rid of evidence of her, she's like, okay, I got to set stuff on fire. So she's drenching stuff in, gasoline, drenching him mostly. She's like, okay, let me look in this closet real quick so I can find some clothes that I can drench. Well, when she opens up the closet door, she sees like women's heads, 3 women's heads that he has preserved, like taxidermy, like they trophies. So she's like, okay, I'm killing this mother. So she sets fire to the house and everything. Then she takes her things from her car and puts it in his truck. But before she leaves, she's just like, yeah, I need to see about the missing girl. So she finds Brianna in the shed and unties her. And then Bree tells her, are you Grace? And Grace is like, yeah, I'm Grace. And she's just like, oh, Calvin said that he was going to replace me with you. He was going to kill. We know he was going to kill her. But Grace is like, okay. She walks Bree back to the ranch, and she's like, okay, my job is done. And she tells her, you're safe now. He's dead. And Bree asks, have you called the cops? And Grace is like, of course not. No. So Bree is scared and she wants to leave with Grace. But whenever Bree tries to like stop Grace from leaving her, Grace turns around and roundhouse kicks her in the chest. She says, you are welcome. And then she hops in the car and she leaves. Dang, Grace. Grace, who are you? You just kicked me in my chest after you saved me? This can't eat. She's not her sister. I can't see myself just saving my sister and then like kicking her in the face and like, okay, you're on your own. Bye. Dang. So Grace goes back to that gas station that I mentioned at the beginning of the story to fill up. There is no like credit card machine. It's cash only. So she pays him $80, and the clerk, he's like, he notices her and he tells her, hey, I like your hair. She's like, thanks. And she starts walking towards the door. And then he calls out, Avery. And she says, what did you just say? He said, Avery Adams. She apparently had dropped her ID on the first visit, and that was the reason the clerk was trying to come after her to return her ID. So her name is actually Avery Adams, not Grace. So she kills him. She kills him. Like, she blows up the gas station after she gets her gas, of course. And I'm like, who is this lady? She says, your average woman who just likes killing. She ditched Calvin's car somewhere in Nebraska, then got a rental car from there, drove the rental car somewhere else. I don't know where she drove it to. Got an Uber, then took the Uber to her car, and then took her car to drive home. She lives in Chicago, and she is married with 2 kids, a boy and a girl. She says there's no reason for how she is. She had a great childhood. She was never mistreated, never neglected, never abused. She says that her brain is just wired differently. She kills because she enjoys it. Now, usually when she meets men, she tries to do this isolation technique. But it was not needed for Calvin because his life was already a mess. But to add fuel to the fire, when she was slow dancing with Joe, she slapped him in the face just to make it seem like he was inappropriate with her. And Calvin didn't even question it. They already had a shaky relationship, so it was just like, this is pretty much icing on the cake. She knew from the moment that she met Calvin, she was going to kill him. And she knew from the moment that she met him that he was like her. But he couldn't tell that she was like him. She was like, Calvin was molded into a psychopath. But she wasn't crazy. She was just born this way. And that is how the story ends. I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. It kind of starts off it started off slower than I intended for it. So I started taking notes later on than I wanted to, because I was just like, ain't nothing even happening. But I just think it was well written. Geneva Rose, I've read probably like 3 or 4 of her books already. This may be the 4th book. Um, she's very good, very good storyteller, very good at, almost like I put her in the same category as Frida McFadden. They're very good at, like, I feel as though I'm not. Maybe it's just that I'm just stupid and I can't figure out who the killer is based off of the information that I received until like the very last minute. But I never expected for Grace to be a different person. But it was hinted to, if you think about it, because Charlotte kept saying, why is she here? Betty didn't like her, and was saying things similar to that, like she needs to leave, she does not belong here. Um, but I just kept thinking that she was a victim, she was a victim, she was a victim. But this girl, she tells her husband that she goes on retreats. Baby, she goes on retreats. She needs, some time away, and she goes on these retreats and she kills whoever the host is. That's just crazy. That's just crazy to me. You're just killing people just because. But I enjoyed this. I thought that it was a really good read. If you want to read it, again, it's called You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. My next book, I'm trying to do a rom-com, so I'm gonna see how that goes. But we shall see. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the next one.